Hello everybody, my name is Duggan and I'm here today just to tell you about some research that I carried out as part of the Masters in Education and Training Management here in DCU. So I engaged in some action research over the last year, and what I did was I created a multimedia artifact for emergency medical technicians in order to help them to review their medications and their current scope of practice, and also to contribute to their continuous professional competence portfolio. So I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself. I work for a company based in Galway called Career Path College, and we provide training to the pre-hospital and the healthcare industry, but we train all over Ireland. And also, just as part of this program in DCU, I decided to use the skills that I've learned here over the last 2 years in order to create something to improve my practice for our organisation, Career Path College. So what I created, as you can see here, is a multimedia artifact. It's web-based and it's interactive, and it helps emergency medical technicians to review their own medications. So as long as you've got Wi-Fi, they're able to access this course from anywhere. So coming back to the actual foundations of this course that I built, I engaged in action research in order to make this happen and get it to the stage that it's at right now. And the approach I took, as you know, is action research, but specifically the educational entrepreneurial approach to action research by Crotty. And there's 4 stages within this approach, and I'm going to take you through them and show you how they reflect back on how I went through my research right now. So I'm going to start with the explore stage. So this explore stage required me to look internally first in order to research for the content of the course that I created for the registered EMTs. So I had a look at my own values, and I had a look at my own worldview and how I look at things, because this influences how I would carry out my research. So my values of honesty and creating understanding came into play, and it helped me to decide on some of the content for this course. Obviously, I had to look at my work culture, and were we open to learning and developing something new, which we are. And also I had a look at our e-culture. So we ranked initial on the e-learning roadmap by PDST, and how can I affect change. So basically I had a look at all of this to see, am I able to create something of value to my company to take us on the journey to e-learning, because we didn't really have e-learning to begin with, so this was a chance for me to take us that little step further. So it's a big deal for us as an organisation because we're mainly classroom based. So armed with all of this information then, I moved on to the second phase of the educational entrepreneurial approach to action research, which is to try and understand what it is that we're actually going to put together. So I came up with 2 strands of why and what I would create. So the first thing was to, obviously, as I've said, take our organisation online, move along with technology, and increase our course options, and increase our business as well at the end of the day. But more so, this was about educational, which is what this approach is about. So I decided to create a continuous professional competence course, and the reason I did that is because I looked into the Irish sector for pre-hospital registered medics, and there's very little out there for them in terms of e-learning. So there is blended learning approaches, but it still requires some face-to-face time. So I decided that I was going to create something that would save them time and costs for people who are working night shifts, 12-hour shifts, crazy hours all the time, that this could possibly be of benefit to them, while also adding to their annual portfolio for continuous professional competence. So it seemed like a great option for me to move forward with. Now, I also had to ask myself some key questions that's required from this stage of the entrepreneurial approach to education, or to action research rather, which is, do I have the motivation to do this? Because it's not for the short term, it's a long-term project. Do I have the passion, and do I have the skills? And once I was able to really look inside myself and say that I do have that, I was able to move forward with the project. So just taking a break for a moment then from that approach, but still part of it is, it's important to look at the literature here to see what has been said before. So basically, I looked at 2 key themes for myself for this, and it was reasons to employ e-learning. So I had to make sure it was worth our while to go there, okay? So obviously cost effectiveness, flexibility were key issues there, which would work well for us. but also to just be aware of certain things that was coming up in the literature repeatedly. So do I have management buy-in, which I did? Do I really have management buy-in? So are they just telling me that they're supporting me, or are they going to give me long-term support, which they are? Other things like taking, into consideration that I'd be creating completely on my own here. So I'd have to be the subject matter expert, the instructional designer. I'd have to do the putting together of the course, and that would take time. So are management willing to give me the time to work on that? So they're really key questions to ask. And then, of course, about the actual design itself. I looked at different design methodologies here, and I came up with the preferred one for me was the Shirley Waterhouse version, which is, a complete course instruction cycle. So things like your vision phase, I'll move very quickly through these, but the vision phase, so, the planning, what am I going to actually create? My profiling phase, who is my target audience, to design for them. My objectives phase, which is to make sure that my learning objectives are mapped properly and that I adhere to those in the course and deliver on that. My design phase, which is actually sitting down, mapping it out, storyboarding, how would this look, colours, shapes, etc. My development phase then is actually putting that into practice and putting the whole thing together and getting my colleagues to give me feedback. The delivery phase then, which is an interim phase of making sure you get critical feedback in order to improve, which is a huge part of this approach that I've taken, and an assessment phase then to get feedback on the course. So, as I've said, I've taken the educational entrepreneurial approach to action research as my guiding framework for this whole project. But just to be aware that there's a lot in that. So, as well as the 4 phases, we have to ask ourselves, what is educational? So it's not just a business stance here, it's creating something that'll make a positive impact in the workplace for your work practice. But it's also entrepreneurial because I'm creating something from scratch. I'm researching for it and I'm designing it and I'm bringing it to fruition. So that they're key elements of this approach. So I'll now, just to make a little mention that because this is not hugely statistical driven and a quantitative analysis that I'm doing in my research, I have to find ways to make sure that this stands up to rigor and validity. So how I do that is to make sure that I record everything I do, that I have my reflective practice journals, which is a key thing that I've taken throughout this project, is to reflect critically on what I'm doing and how I feel about every stage of the action. And that is my evidence then to support me all the way through. Forum discussions with my peers on my master's program, emails from my colleagues on critical feedback. All of these are ways that I can actually validate what I'm doing and prove that I actually did the things I did. So I obviously attended presentations and validation meetings also. And just a word on ethics too, that all my participants were informed fully before, during and after this process. And they signed informed consent forms as well. So they were fully aware that they were part of this process all the way through. So at this stage then in my research, I was armed with all my information, so I was able to move forward with the process. So this process is called the create phase, and it spans everything from seeking approval from my organisation to the planning, my little stickmen storyboards as I like to call them, and then the actual filming of the video footage that I shot to put into this interactive course. Editing that video, new skills. And as a part of all of this filming, the key thing that came out of this was the collaboration that took place between me and my colleague during the filming that couldn't have happened without this process. A performance element to this as well is that I'm putting my work out there like I am today for your scrutiny, so that you can give me feedback just like my colleagues and my peers did. And only that way can I improve my artifact and make it better. And that's the whole cyclical nature of action research. So these are just some examples. I'm aware of time, so I won't go into it in too much detail, but just to show the before and the after of, when I design it myself versus when I actually take the time to consult the design literature and get feedback from my peers, the difference it makes to my creation because of that. So that's again a key part of this. So in terms of transformations, quite a lot happened to come out of this for me personally, because not only have I learned obviously new technical skills, which is great, but I've also learned that I am a creative person, which I didn't actually know before this, and also I've now got the confidence to continue on with eLearning, and I translate that across to our organisational goals we've met, because we now as an organisation are able to take our eLearning forward. So that's a really big transformation. And finally then, just, again, I mentioned collaboration, which is key to this approach, and my colleagues feel more included now, and they're happy to proceed with me to take this course forward as well, which is a big change. Lessons learned: consult the design literature before you start designing on your own, because you learn an awful lot from that, which I did. So that was a huge learning curve for me. Consulting the literature taught me so much that I didn't know already, and that collaboration is key, basically. So that is the transform. So it's the final stage in this action research process. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers. Thank you.